Hello there, Gamerinos and Gamerinas. Welcome to UnicornStorm. This is Rady, and I really enjoy cooking games. Games about food preparation, restaurant management games, all that good stuff. I even made a video about some of my favorites back when my channel exclusively featured German content. And since there have been a lot more of those released since then, I'm thinking about making a follow-up to it. One of the games I mentioned in that video was Cook, Serve, Delicious. And for good reason. The game was fast-paced fun, implemented the culinary theme exceptionally well, and added just a little bit of good old 90s PC gaming charm. It was just a blast, and I've been following the series ever since. So when I saw that the new iteration had been announced, this time with a greater focus on story in this wacky, alternate, post-apocalyptic, food truck-obsessed universe, I was instantly hooked. And so I reached out to the devs for a review key, and they graciously granted me one. But just because I didn't need to pay for the game doesn't mean I'm gonna pull any punches. So here we go. As I already said, this new game focuses more on storytelling and streamlines, or well, dumps down the core gameplay. This time we play as Nori, who grew up idolizing a TV cook, which led her to starting her own food truck business. She comes from a poor background, learned how to cook from her mother, and just wants to make her way in the world. So instead of a faceless player insert who just manages a business, and that's it, or the ridiculous setup of the legendary diner owner who needs to get his business on the streets to save the world or something, with no further depth to it, there is now something akin to an actual story with actual characters who might even have some kind of personality. Yeah, not really. I don't even think the approach of a more story-focused cooking game is a bad idea. One reason I was interested in that game, aside from it being of a franchise I happen to enjoy, is that I myself dabbled with the idea of making a kind of visual novel cooking minigame genre mix. That's still a long way off, and I guess now it counts as a ripoff, but yeah, it had me intrigued and I wanted to see what it's about. The problem isn't that the game focuses on story, not in the least. It's that it is just badly written. It's full of zoomer writing that pretty much checks all the boxes of that dreadful contemporary storytelling. I don't want to get too much into that, but it seems the devs have now fully committed to that style, so the game story is full of this childish worldview and with that, world building. In between the gameplay sections we get to watch short, simple visual novel style cutscenes that bit by bit tell us more about our main characters and the world they're living in. Oh, she's called Bree. And our character's called Nori. Yeah, that's cute. It's infuriatingly mundane, while at the same time outrageously nonsensical. Where the protagonist and her girlfriend live in a borderline derelict building, soon to be demolished, so they need to move to a new place but can't afford that much. What with the protagonist owning a food truck in a city where no one eats out, it seems, and the girlfriend just loitering on the street the whole day with her guitar.
A man tipped me with a cookie, so that was nice.
But on a whim they just move to this utopian city and move into a big apartment and everything is fine and dandy. Yeah, it's really weak writing. Dialogues range from inoffensively bland to terrible, especially when the game tries to be funny, and all the characters come off as early to mid-20s, well-educated, middle-class people, or at least how those people imagine other people to behave. So yeah, I didn't enjoy the story segments, and I don't feel that they add anything to the game. They are always very short and don't really go into any detail with the characters and their situation, but on the other hand, it at least isn't a slog to go through these scenes. You can even skip them, not that you need to, with how short they are. So they're not too annoying. That is, as long as the game reserves dialogues to the story scenes. But during gameplay, they can get really annoying and don't really fit the gameplay. Unless the game really doesn't want you to take its system seriously.
Hey, did you see that? Sorry. You're right.
What do
Did you see
think
the...
Again.
This is just embarrassing.
You go.
I said, did you see the bird?
Which bird?
Well, it's gone now. What were you gonna say?
I don't remember.
But speaking of gameplay, the game takes you once again behind a serving counter and simultaneously into the kitchen of your own food business. And you have to serve hundreds, well, tens sometimes, of hungry customers. Before setting up your food stall, you select the dishes on your active menu and get cooking when the customers arrive, trying to prepare everything perfectly to leave your customers happy. In theory. The gameplay got heavily dumbed down from its predecessors. There you had a not too deep but still important management component, where outside factors like the weather affected the popularity of some dishes, or food fatigue when adding the same dishes over and over to the menu, as well as positive and negative side effects like certain dishes producing more garbage or using up more plates in addition to taking up more or fewer steps to prepare the food. In contrast to that, the act of picking out dishes for your active menu in this game is not much more than a bit of window dressing. You don't actively expand your list of available recipes. The game always gives you a limited, randomized selection from which you're allowed to pick 6 items to add to your menu for the day. There are no bonuses or drawbacks to any of the food items. Maybe the reward for hidden stage goals is tied to whichever dish you choose for the mission. I don't really know, I haven't unlocked a single one yet. I'm not even sure if the feature is already in the game. The game is in early access right now, so it might be possible that not all features have been implemented completely. Or I just haven't found any of the secrets, that's the most likely explanation. But yeah, the non-existent management aspect is a shame. Again, the franchise was never a deep management simulation, but there was enough strategy to employ to give each playthrough its own spin. You earned money from successful serving shifts, which you could invest in new dishes or better equipment. You wanted to expand your selection of dishes to better mix and match and find the perfect combination for any situation. And you wanted better equipment for passive bonuses, like less chores during your shift, more patient customers or higher tips. In this game, you have no influence on what dishes are even available, and there is no upgradable equipment. There is no equipment at all. There is nothing to buy, no money to earn in this game, which has me questioning why there even is a sequence at the food market before every mission, if there's nothing meaningful to do there. Completing shifts nets you XP for the location you're in, and leveling up a location raises its difficulty slightly and unlocks further locations. And all the locations look pretty nice. All of the background art does, in fact. The character art, while clean and not too shabby, is kind of bland and the same you'd see in any other millennial or zoomer visual novel. Never too unattractive, slightly quirky but still mundane looking anime-ish inspired comic characters with either prominent tattoos, flashy accessories or dyed hair to make them look like the young modern audience that never wants to grow up and those who aspire to be like them. Not that I'm one to talk. Yeah. The food still looks pretty good, amazing at times, not really realistic but nevertheless delicious. It's a bit sad that you can't consult a huge list of dishes anymore with pictures and descriptions, but maybe this is something that will get added later down the line. Every dish comes in a lot of different variations, due to this game's upgrade system. Whenever you're working your shift, every now and then you get to select bonuses or perks, and some of them temporarily upgrade random ingredients. So you might start off with a bowl of cheap rice, with a bit of fish and some chicken strips, and upgrade the individual ingredients until you got some premium rice and vegetables with lobster and whole chicken drumsticks. You still have no influence over what gets upgraded and when, but the different visuals you get over the course of a work shift are still quite nice. That said, the previous games did something similar, while not offering that much in sheer quantity for any comparable single dish, but adding a lot more complexity. There, every dish came with a variety of recipes. A mixed salad wasn't just a mixed salad. Customers ordered different vegetables and dressings with it, with maybe some cheese or bacon on top. A burger could be served with or without cheese and different sauce. Simpler dishes offered maybe just 2 or 3 different variations, while more complicated dishes required you to be attentive and careful while still working quickly, especially when a rush hour was taking place. This game has no rush hours. There is never more than one customer at once, and there are no chores to do. So you never need to manage the queue, you never need to weigh up whom to serve first or what food to prepare first. You are just going through the motions in this one, and that extends to the actual cooking. Instead of having a bunch of ingredients with every dish you need to select manually and sometimes even execute repeat button commands to mimic the actual movement in the game, you now just perform random button commands. In the other games it was extremely complicated, or maybe convoluted, but in a good way. It simulated the stressful work in a busy kitchen. Running a restaurant isn't relaxing or chill. It's incredibly hard work. And in addition to having to do everything meticulously and prudently, you also have to do everything quickly, because no one likes to wait for their food. Well, Cook Serve Forever wants to be more laid back, have a more relaxing gameplay loop. That's why you don't have to manage your popularity or your bank account. That's why you don't need to think about the food on your menu. After a while I just chose the first 6 dishes on my list because it didn't make any difference. Instead of having a different button for every ingredient and sometimes different ways to prepare them, you now have a kind of Simon Says system using exclusively the directional buttons. Maybe the face buttons on a controller, but never more than 4. Sometimes you have to press the button, sometimes you have to hold it, sometimes you have to do this repeatedly, sometimes you can press any button, and sometimes you are prohibited from pressing specific buttons. The system itself is not bad, at least not in isolation, but you pretty much do the same action no matter what ingredient you're using or at what step in the recipe you are. There seems to be no relation between your button prompts and the action on screen, aside from higher quality ingredients requiring slightly more difficult button commands. But whereas in the previous games there was a certain logic to the inputs you had to perform, though that became less and less with each iteration, there's now just rows of button commands that result in the ingredient getting dropped onto the plate. I don't need to remember or look up the recipe, I don't need to keep the correct buttons in mind or read through my ingredient list. Everything is automated. Just press the directional buttons as they appear on screen. Most of the time I don't even see the food I'm preparing because my eyes are drawn to the lower part of the screen. And I can't just memorize the recipe because there's always a certain randomness to it. So I have to keep my eyes on the Simon Says commands and put them in moderately fast to keep a high rank. And while there is a score multiplier that certainly has some effect on some system, avoiding mistakes and keeping a high rank isn't actually that important in this game, so long as you don't waste too much time and have the timer drop into the red. And on that note, the HUD is kinda unintuitive or misleading. At one point I just wanted to see what happens if I let my rank drop and wanted to know what those little segments on my rank meter did. But they aren't actually used. It's just some useless and misleading detail on a gauge to show you how well you're doing. It seems you can't get higher than delicious or lower than bad. Making mistakes isn't too bad, but taking too long to complete a single step reduces your rank by 1. But working quickly builds up your meter. Funny thing is, with all the dumbing down, all the streamlining and all the people defending the game as a more relaxing spin-off that doesn't set out to be as challenging as its predecessors, it's actually not that easy to come back from a bad run. To raise your rank again, you have to complete the button commands quite fast, so if you're already having trouble with the game, it's as stressful as the other ones, since you need to execute those random button combinations even quicker, which makes it more likely to make a mistake and waste precious seconds. That said, performing well isn't really required. While your performance might reward you with extra XP, your main source of XP are the 3 perks you get to select during a mission. which come with bonuses or drawbacks. Level up your ingredients, which is gameplay wise an increase in difficulty, I guess, and they award you XP. So just by barely getting through the mission, you're constantly leveling up and unlocking new locations and uninteresting story segments. The only way the gameplay could be less involved would be if it were an actual cookie clicker. So yeah, I guess it is obvious that I'm not that impressed with the game. Yeah, it is a spin-off for the people who don't enjoy the stressful nature of the main series, and I think it's a good idea to reach out to a new potential audience. But that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be any depth to be found at all in a game. And the piss-poor story couldn't save the game either. XCOM did something similar with Chimera Squad. It dialed back on the micromanaging and centered the game around short and sweet combat encounters with a few twists. The game has its own list of problems, but at least it didn't dump down everything that made the game fun in the first place. This here looks more like a little time waster and should be maybe on mobile devices for those who like to play games while on the toilet. Yeah, the graphics are nice and clean, the food looks fucking delicious, the music is shallow shite, but I guess it serves its purpose. It has some good beat and tempo and keeps you in a solid rhythm while doing the Simon Says commands.
We're getting closer to the city now. Painting with the concrete, painting the colors. I sailed the 7 seas. No wind at my back, no land, no trees. The sky slate black. I'm happy with the way I look, happy with the way I dance, happy with fatherhood, happy with our strange romance.
It reminds me a bit of gym music that just fades into the background after a while. I prefer the swingy and jazzy music from the previous games, but for what it's worth, the music in this one is fine. I don't think I can really recommend this game. There's not just no challenge, but also no depth and no meaning to be found. The story isn't worth it, and the farther you get, the more of the shallow, always the same missions you have to complete before you get the next 1 minute of dialogue. You'd be better off playing the other Cook Serve Delicious games. Or something like Cooking Mama or Overcooked. That one is a massive ton of fun with friends. But whatever you'll do, have an awesome day. That's it from Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.
Been really good to know. Why didn't you read the letter?
Bree? Are you feeling all right?
Yeah, I'm great. Why?
You keep touching your face in that weird way.